Welcome to another episode of CHAP's Rose Resource Room. Today, I am thrilled to be with Aziza Butler. We are going to talk about all things motherhood, life, homeschool, and everything in between. So I just want to give her a second to introduce herself. Aziza, tell us about the woman outside of being a mom, a wife, and a homeschool mom. Tell us about you, then we can jump into all of that. Welcome.
I love that. Thank you so much for having me on with you. It's such a pleasure. So yes, I am Aziza Butler, and yes, before I was a mom, before I was a wife, and all of the well in the reverse order, but I was just a girl who just passionately loved her father, and was like, and I was one of those people that prayed that prayer that was like, Lord, whatever your will is for my life, I want to follow it. I just want to, serve you. And, you're just so good to me. And I'm just open for whatever your adventure is and your calling and your plan and purpose for my life. And yeah, so I started out as a, uh, just as an educator, and I taught in the public schools, and then I taught at a Christian school, and I just kind of passionately pursued education. I would say honestly, like all of my life, I probably when I was like 7 years old or so, I really just was so into like children and teaching, and I loved my teachers, um, and uh, and yeah. But then somewhere in there, I just kind of saw education from God's perspective, and it was
Yes.
like um like God, I believe that God is just really passionate about education because he's passionate about his word, and if we can read God's word, then that's like one easy way that the enemy can just really knock us off course, because we won't know the truth. We literally can't even digest it, we can't dig into it, we can't study it. um and then um and then all of education, everything that we learn and do, it just mimics, or not even mimics, I would say it expounds on who God is. And like how Colossians talks about, like we see God in all of his invisible, we see his invisible qualities by being able to view what we can see. And so we see that parallel. So like math, for instance, it mimics the order of God. And science just reveals how awesome God is, because the more we learn, it's like, wow, God is awesome. God is amazing. How does this work like this? Or, how, we're really just studying everything that all the laws that he already put into the universe he created. So, and yeah, and just, um, social science, just, we learn about the story of how the story of all the people, and how he created and how they interacted with their world and their environment and their culture. You know, um, and yeah, so as a passionate educator, I just really wanted kids to be able to, and not kids, but just people to have a firm foundation, so that when God calls them, and as he calls them, they will not have any hindrances in their intellect and their thinking and their ability to read and digest his word and comprehend. Because in Timothy, it says, he's like, oh, to about the scriptures that you've known since infancy, that will make
Mm.
salvation. And so that just, all of that just really, really sticks close to my heart as an educator. And so, but then I also saw educating kids, like being in a classroom with kids, or being in an environment where kids are around you. In that particular sense, I was like, this is an awesome opportunity to just like disciple hearts. And because they go through all of their life, is really, when it comes to like school, whether it's public school or private school or homeschooling, kid, like that's their life. They're learning their lessons, their life lessons through education. So and their experience in education. So anyway, so all that to say, I was a very passionate educator. And I love the Lord, and I felt like he was just really calling me um to to step out and do this for him. And so yeah, so before that I was that, and I also love other things. Like I love dancing, I love music. I did like praise dancing for a time, African dancing, as a kid. I love to read, I love writing, I love to learn, I love talking to people. And everyone who knows me knows that I'm a very strong extrovert. But those are just a few things, but yeah.
And that's probably what got us here today, because for those of you who don't know, this is my very first time meeting Aziza. Like
It
we've
is.
never like we just have this love for meeting new people and talking to people, just sharing our journey. So I love that. And I love that you're a Jesus girl. And I love what you talked about in terms of discipling hearts. Like I've never really heard it said like that. And I think it's so eloquently put when you say it like that. So you're a public educator, and you said Christian school too, but you're a teacher turned homeschool mom. And I feel like you started to share a little bit about what sparked that journey, but what was like the real turning point when you're like, no, I have to leave public education and do this at home?
Right. So I never thought about homeschooling. That never even crossed my mind. I think when I was a kid, I was like, I wish I didn't have to go to school every day. Like I wish I had more time to just do the things I really enjoy, or, just having a flexible kind of schedule. Okay, this is a super side note, but I remember being a kid, I think I had to like, when I was like in kindergarten or something, I think I had to do like a doctor's appointment. I don't know, something, where your parent takes you off for like one day. I thought that the whole world kind of shut down while I was in school. I was so like amazed to see. I'm like, there are people driving the expressway. There are people in the stores. I was like,
All
I
this
didn't
life
understand.
happening.
I was in school. I was like, this is like a trick. Why do I have to go to this building and stay here all day if there's a whole world happening,
Mm.
outside of this building? So I think that was maybe the first kind of seed of like, you're trapped. You're in a prison in a sense, and it doesn't have to be this way. But yeah, so that wasn't my experience. I was a public school kid, and I always say that yes, I did, come out loving the Lord and learning and kind of excelling in academics, but I think that was more like in spite of, not because of.
Mm-hmm.
Like the devil thought he had me, but I got away. So, but I always wanted to teach, and so I knew that, like I said, around the age of 7 or 8, and then I kind of just really went hard with it while I was in high school and college, and I majored in education. And then, but all the while I was doing a lot of like tutoring and like all the, jobs of working with kids, like working at summer programs and after school programs and camps and things. That's how I kind of spent my summers and evenings sometimes, and babysitting. But I think the thing that really shifted for me was when my first child, so we have 6 children. Our first, it's a girl and the rest are boys. So when our first was born, she's 12 years old now, so it's about 12 years ago. I was just home. I had stopped to, be home with her. I just said I would be gone for about a year. And I really thought I would be gone for about a year. And I was teaching at a Christian school that I loved. I loved my students. I loved my coworkers. But and so what happened was that I was just literally like, I was like, okay, she's going to be needing to go somewhere soon. I need to pray about which school should I send her. Should we send her to school down the street? Should we check out some private school or something? And I felt like the Lord was like, homeschool her. And that's what I did. So that was the turning point. I just prayed about, what do I do? And I felt like the Lord was kind of loud and clear. And I was just like, who homeschools? What in the world? Like, this is 2000. At that time, it was 2011, 2012. I was like, do Black people even homeschool? Like, it was so many questions I had. And so I looked up, I just probably did what everybody who's going to watch this probably did when they first got that call. They just kind of
Go
Googled,
to
like,
Google.
is it legal? Like, all the questions.
Right.
I did. And I saw, and the more just as time went on, I saw, wow, like there's so many people that God was calling to do this, but but it's, especially in Illinois, it's different from state to state, but I'm in Illinois, in Chicago, and it's a very lenient state to homeschooling. There are not a lot of regulations and things around it, but that means that it's a little bit harder to find, people are doing it, because it's not like, it's even like a optional form that you send into the, state board. Like, you don't have to file this form. You can if you want to. So, so a lot of homeschoolers are just kind of under the radar. So, yeah, but I was, eventually I found that, just like, who was that? Elijah, who was like, I'm the only one who's doing that. He's like, no, no, no. I have 5,000 people who've not bowed to the knee, who bowed their knee to Baal. So God was like, you're not the only one in Chicago doing this. And I was right. I mean, he was right. There were so many people that he kind of brought to me. And then so many people that he called me too as well. Because they were like, I feel called to homeschool and I heard about you. How do I do this? How can we connect? So but that was kind of the journey. And so here we are, these years later. And and I actually started what I call a flexible schedule learning center for kids whose families who want kind of the benefits of homeschooling and they want to be able to do it, but they want to do it in community. They want to do it with support. And I just want to I want to make homeschooling as accessible for families as possible. So kids they're not, required to come every day. We're there Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 9 to 2:30. And some kids come all of those days. Some kids come 1 day or 2 days a week. So
I love how you heard the call, answered the call, and then made it palatable and feasible for other people too, right? Because it's one thing to hear clearly from God, okay, this is what I want you to do. And it's another thing to say, all right, let me help and rally community, right? Because that was not my story. That was not my journey. Like I was never the person who's like, yeah, once I have these babies, I'm gonna homeschool. I'm like, we're gonna move to a city that we pay a ton of taxes. They're gonna go to public school because the school is good. Fast
oh,
forward, that's not what happened. So we were in one community and the taxes were like 12, 15,000 for like these little boxes. And we're like, we're not doing this. So we literally moved 10 minutes over to the next city and like cut our taxes ridiculously. But of course that came with a limitation. The school was trash. And I'm like, okay, so we can't do this. We cannot afford to put our kids in this school. Like it's free, but we can't afford to do it because they're not going to get the educational benefit they want. And the policies that were coming down the pipeline, we didn't want our kids exposed to all of that. So even before the pandemic, my husband had started talking about homeschooling. And I'm like, that's new, that's random. But our version of homeschooling was like the kids would be home and someone would come into the home and teach the kids, right? So it was just like a teacher coming in. I live in Jersey, even though I'm doing this for the Christian Homeschool of Pennsylvania. We're expanding. So I'm in Jersey. So our laws, like Chicago, like Illinois, are pretty flexible. So I was living in Jersey, working in New York City, and I just never thought of me doing it, but I was open to the idea of it. Fast forward 2021, I quit my job and I'm like, all right, so now I'm going to work on my business. I'm going to do this productivity coaching thing, helping moms navigate personal and professional lives. And I did that for a good 2 months. Everything was like really good. And then the Lord told me that he wanted me to pull my oldest kid out of school. And he was in private Christian school at this time because we knew public school wasn't going to work for him. So we found this one. And there are times when like you think God is calling you to do something. There was no thinking. I was so clear on what I heard. And you kind of like try to, I don't know, you try to like put your fingers in your ear like you don't hear. But I couldn't even do it that time. It was so crystal clear. And I just went to my husband and I said, I think God wants me to pull the oldest one out of school to homeschool him. And that's what we did. Like I literally sent in an email and then had a meeting in person with the teachers. And I'm like, thank you for being the support system, having been in Christian school, whatever, but this is what God wants me to do. Then, of course, my middle guy, who was my youngest at the time, the younger at the time, was like, I want to be homeschooled too. And I'm like, well, that's kind of good because I don't have to, have the conversation with him. But also, I'm still trying to get my foot in. And he was graduating kindergarten. So I was like, let's just get your diploma. Let's just walk across the stage. And then a few months later, you'd be out. And that's what I did. But I was never the kind of person who was like, I just want to be home with the kids. And fast forward, I'm so thankful that it happened this way because I'm really enjoying the journey. But going back to you, though, I love that you created this community where people can get the support they need and where they don't feel that they're equipped. You can encourage them, but you can also physically take it on and say, I can help you. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it just hurt my heart a lot to see people who are like, I feel the call and I have the desire, but but they're just like, I can't do it alone, or I need, the support, or maybe I'm a single mom, or I run a business and I do feel like God is calling me to run this business too, or or like I can't afford it.
Hmm.
You know, I need to work up, you know, in some way, you know, like we can't just make it on one income or something. Um, or just literally the isolation that it can be of just
Hmm.
like it's just me home with my kids all day. Um, which is great, but it can't, you know, like, you know, as a woman, as a mom, you know, just having that community as you're going the journey so that you can stay the course, not just for the year or 2 years, but for the journey. So yeah, I just really wanted to be able to yeah, just help to solve that that hurdle. And and it was and God just gives so much grace to be able to do that. Like people are like, how do you homeschool your own children and other, you know, help other families too? But it's not even like I feel like when God has called you to something and he just really equips you to do it as well. So there's just so much grace to be able to do it. And yeah, I always say that I'm like the Harriet Tubman for homeschooling. Like
I love
free
it.
them, let them free.
Right?
So we got free, but
No, I love it.
I need people to be free as possible and not feel like, well, I wanted to do it, but I just couldn't. Da 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 da.
Yeah.
Insert whatever excuse could be. So that's what WeSchool is, just a solution for that. You know, for that. Um,
Hmm. And you talked about like different reasons why people don't homeschool. One of the things you talked about was like people marveling at you wanting to be with your kids. And I always see that as a red flag. Like if you don't want to be around your kids, you need to think about that because that means you created a monster that you're not even interested in being around versus cultivating a kid who you actually like. I feel like in the grand scheme of things, everyone loves their kids, but to be able to
mhm.
like your child, that really means that you put in some work. So there's that. But the other piece you talked about was valid reasons where people are saying, I feel the call. I know it's better. I know it's the option that I'm being called to, but I can't do it. And I really wanted to talk through that because I was in that situation where one, I didn't think it had to be me, right? And then fast forward to, even thinking about it, I'm like, I don't even know that this is financially possible, even though the scripture says all things are possible. And then, we know that with the vision comes provision. So if God is calling you to do something, then obviously He's going to provide and bring the people, bring the resources, equip you because He called you. But one thing, and I don't know if you know this, the way I found out about you was through HSLDA. I'm on their newsletter and I saw something where you did an interview. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to talk to her. But the reason I mentioned that is in the write-up, they said, frustrated by the overwhelming focus in managing children rather than actually teaching, you decided to homeschool. And then they continue to say, in her pursuit, she uncovered a powerful truth. The ultimate qualification for being the best teacher for your child is being their parent. And that's such an uncomfortable truth because you started talking about God is a God of education and how you can see God in every single subject and every single part of the curriculum. But like, what do you say to the parents who, they feel the weight of educating their at home? Like, what do you say to that parent?
Okay, I have a lot to say, but I'm only going to say two things. The first thing is that don't ever like feel like you um that you're any ill-equipped in any way. First of all, you as the parent, you're the primary teacher no matter where they are. Okay, I'm gonna say three things. But that's it, just three. Okay, the first one
I'll take
is
4 or 5, whatever you got, I'll take it all.
you are so equipped to be their teacher because one, you love them more than anybody ever can. Like even as a teacher, I love my students, I still love them today. I'm keep in touch with them. I take them out, we text, we call, things like that. But their parents still love them even more than I do because they've known them since infancy, and then as a teacher, the kid's teacher is invested in their child, but you're invested in them in a whole different level. Like if they don't succeed in life, if they don't kind of make it and get out there and and leave and cleave kind of thing, they are going to be in your basement. And so you're invested in a whole another way. And then you just know them better than anybody else ever could, just from getting them in the classroom for the year. Like When kids would come into my classroom in September or whatever, time of the year they came, I would I would endeavor to learn them, like really learn them, to try to understand them, study them, talk to them, talk to the parents, ask a lot of questions, all those things. But still, at the end of the year, they move on, they go to another teacher. Now I'm learning the new set of kids all over again. So, but you know them, like them, their kind of quirks, kind of their strengths, their weaknesses, what motivates them, what discourages them, their buttons. And you're still learning, you still know them better than a teacher would. So those three things for sure. You know them better, you love them more, and you're more invested. That right there alone, it's like that's why you need to be the teacher. And then secondly, you're already homeschooling anyway. So,
Right.
like being a parent is homeschooling. Like
Yeah.
sometimes we complicate it and we make it like, oh, I can't, I'm only, I don't know, let's say I'm a banker. I don't know how to teach kids to read. That's fine. You're teaching them already. You've been teaching them things. There's tons of things you taught them you didn't know you could teach a
Yeah.
kid, like how to tie their shoe. Like you never thought about like how to tie my shoe, or little things like how to use the wash your hands properly, or to use the microwave, or how to put their books back in the bookshelf after, all the things, like you're already doing it. You're teaching them all the time anyway. And then to always say you're already homeschooling, even if you send them to, no matter what school choice you have, you're homeschooling maybe in the evenings only, or on the weekends, or only over the summer, but you're already doing it. And then there's just a ton of curriculum and things that you can use to fill in all of the spots. And guess what? Teachers are learning too. That's why they have professional developments. That's why we, do, we're learning in our off time, like, how do I teach this again? I don't remember this, or how do I, you're constantly like learning as well. And that's actually the beauty of it, when you humble yourself to say, I'm gonna learn as my kids learn. That's great. The teacher does that too. She or he learns as they're teaching as well. So, and then I wanted to say that, that homeschooling is, the beautiful thing about it too, is that it can be flexible, that you can make it what it needs to be for you.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to look the same in every household. So maybe some families get up and they start their work at 6 a.m. and they, do their schoolwork and do the thing or whatever. Or it can look like, oh, we have a kind of a full day, and then we start our schoolwork around 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock or something. Or maybe it's like, oh, in these days of the week, we help take care of grandma. So we're going to do your schoolwork at grandma's house, or however the thing goes. Like, the beautiful thing about homeschooling is that it can look the way you need it to look. Maybe, you're out and about taking field trips all the time, or maybe you travel. Like my husband does a lot of like speaking and traveling and things, and as he pastors. But the good thing is that sometimes they'll go with them, and it's like, okay, take your schoolwork. You're going to be, I know you'll be in, I don't know, Seattle this week, but you can, do some of your, do your work there. So there, I don't know if they did on the plane or in the hotel room. I don't know, but they get it done. It doesn't, and if we were another kind of school choice thing, like a public school or something, maybe they would be like, oh, you can't leave for a week to go with your dad. And it's like, yes, you can. So yeah, I think it's important to think about what it can look like, what it needs to look like for your family. And that's really a great thing, is that it can be so flexible, so creative, for what works for your family and what you need. Or like for us, we do, like, my husband wanted us to do kind of like a Friday Sabbath. So he's like, no school, no work, no kind of schoolwork. We're going to just kind of build in this, just like a rhythm of kind of resting and kind of recalibrating things. And at first I was like, oh, no school. We do schoolwork every day. But no, I was like, that was from the Lord, because that's been very helpful mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. It's been really great. And so they do schoolwork sometimes on Sundays or Saturdays too. So it's, but what works for your family, that's the beautiful thing. So you can do it, is all of the gist of that.
You said so many great things, because the uncomfortable truth is that some people just don't want to do it, right? And I don't know if I'd say the system, but society has made us believe that we can't do it academically, right? Like you talked about, oh, I don't know how to teach a kid how to read, but we can't do it financially. Oh, if you go down to one income, what does that look like? Well, if you really do the math, I was sending my whole check to the daycare anyways in the beginning. So,
And
I
to
think
your tank from running them all of
Yeah.
the city and traffic and all of the things and getting the supplies for this thing or that thing that they were going to lean
Yeah.
these ones. Yeah.
Right. So I get it financially. Some people may say that, it's not something that they can do, but things are always possible. And then there is that redemption of education, right? Like there's some things that I'm teaching the kids. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I get to do this again. But a couple of things you mentioned is the organic and classical way that kids learn, right? So like I have a 10-month-old, as you know, and I don't walk around saying, let me get to the dictionary and tell you what this is. I say chair, apple, red, blue. And I am the primary teacher. I'm his first teacher. However, it's like something in our minds tell us, okay, they're this certain age, you can't do it anymore. But I was doing it the whole time. So why am I no longer equipped? Where did that come from? Where did that come from where we start to feel ill-equipped or we're no longer good enough? Right? We're good enough to teach the colors, we're good enough to teach the ABC, but all of a sudden we're no longer able to do it. And then when you talked about like schedules, public school didn't work with my schedule. I'm like, wait, 8:45 to 2:45? I work 8 to 5. This is not working because it takes me an hour and a half to get to work if I'm, commuting from Jersey to New York City. So this schedule actually does not work. So then now you're paying for aftercare and you're doing all these things when you can lean into the flexibility of being at home. Right. Like I had 3 meetings this morning and I had one kid working alongside me, then the other one was with the younger brother, and then they switched, and then they were on a break. Like it's so flexible. Like you said, you can do it on a plane, you can do it in a car. Like the work is flexible, the paper can travel. So it definitely helps with the flexibility and just building your lifestyle and making everything fit versus trying to make everything fit around an outside system. So I thought that was important, but let's talk a little bit more about flexibility because you know there's so many things that you can do, but that can also become a challenge, right? So you know that there are core subjects where there's like reading, writing, or arithmetic. You know that there are some electives like the history, geography, and all those things that you can talk or teach about. But what about all the other things that you start to notice because you are with your kids all the time, like character and teaching them how to do chores and all those things? How do you fit it all in, or how do you prioritize what you work on first or at all?
I think there's this thing where we feel like we have to do everything at once. And I just think that that's just a trick of the enemy because you can't do everything at once. I think there's seasons to things. Like, maybe it's like, I feel like we're in a season where we need to like major on like transitioning guys, like clean up after yourself and putting things back where they belong and getting ready quicker, or things things like that, or being able to go from one thing to the next without being distracted or whatever, and just transitioning well, and that could be you're majoring on that in this season. So yeah, you're doing your math and reading, but you're also doing that. Or maybe you notice that like as you're doing working on something with the kids, this is the things that I do. Like last year I was like, this last year, the year before, I was just noticing that um that the kids are like they're so articulate and they read so well. But when it comes to their actually like writing it, they were just a little bit, I felt like lazy. Like what it's like, why is that sentence so short? Like, or we used to have some more adjectives, or let's use a complex compound sentence here. And and I really wanted to just hone in on their writing. And so we went hard with writing. I was like, you guys can write every week. It's like, I'm only 6 or 5. Yes, you're going to write an essay every week too. And then when she was 11, I'm like, you're going to write an essay every other day because you all need to just really improve your writing. Like, and I always tell them like writing is like, God will use your write. Like that is a way to be able to be somewhere that you're not, like maybe you can't like, it's great. You can speak really well, but what if you're not there? What if you need to transport your message to somewhere where you can't be? That's what writing is. And it needs to be clear and it needs to be, easy to comprehend. And so you have to work it. It's a craft. Anyway, that's a side note, but I'm just saying like, that as you go, as you notice that things need to be added on, you can always add that in, and then you can always take it out for a season. Like, okay, we're gonna not work on writing as much anymore. We're gonna really work on, like you notice, like, maybe they're really into, some science things. It's like, we're gonna do some more crafts. We're gonna do some more painting and, things. And so that's the beautiful thing about it, is that you don't have to be married to anything necessarily. And so you can just be flexible and kind of do it as you go, add some things in as you notice it will benefit them. Take it out as you feel like, you get in kind of like the flow of that. But yeah, it's you don't have to be so rigid. And that's the beautiful thing about it, is that you don't have to be so rigid. Because there were so many things, even as a classroom teacher, I'm like, we don't necessarily have to do this, but we have to do this. And it's like, this is just wasting our time. And we don't have to do this.
That busy work, right?
Or we need to do this. And
But we're not.
we can't do this because of the environment we're in, but you really need this. And so I'm going to tell parents, like, that they could really use this. I know it's not part of our curriculum, but I really recommend it, and so, yeah, I would just suggest, so those are some ways that I do it, but I can't do everything every day for every kid every year, it definitely looks different from year to year. It looks different even from month to month. Sometimes there are definitely day to day. That's true, right? Some days it's like, oh, we didn't get to any of the things that we thought we would do, like, because we spent the day, I don't know, cleaning out the tower garden and planting, vegetables and stuff. And I'm like, oh no, we didn't get to our lesson in math.
But that was a lesson, though.
How much did we learn, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's, I just learned about all these different, herbs and vegetables that you had never heard of, and how to plant them, and hydroponic growing, and all these things. And so it's, so there's learning to happen all the time. And so I always say to home educators or parents that the real thing is just to make home a learning environment. And that doesn't always mean it can mean putting, labels on all of, like when they're small, like chair, table, desk, that's one way, printing your environment, have some books and stuff like that, but also just making home a learning environment, like putting things around them that they can kind of see and touch and feel and learn and things. But then also, you as a parent, know that you're always teaching anyway. Just in your day-to-day conversation, just them listening to you, just the way that you talk, the words you use, the vocabulary words, even down to that you use. Like, I remember there was, because my husband always says, he's like, technically, he's like, my wife is a homeschooler, is homeschooling our kids. Not me, and so we joked about it, but his vocabulary is so, he's such a wordsmith, and he regularly uses words that, not only words that I don't use like regularly, but words that, like, I've never even heard of. I'm like, what is that word? You just been
holding on to check that
for 17 years. I've never heard you use the word. And he's like, first of all, I'm like, I don't think that's a word. And he's like, oh, it's a word. And I'll look it up, like, oh my gosh, it is a word. Like, how do you have all these words? Anyway, so he's always teaching our kids and me, like, according to his strengths, like speaking and Bible understanding and vocabulary, things like that. Anyway, but one day they were really young, but he had said something like, oh, like, leave the door ajar. And you're like, what? It's like a jar or whatever. And anyway, that was like a line. I was like, see, look at this. This is
that's a lesson.
Teaching, yeah. And then the one thing about I feel like homeschooling families or parents who aren't educators by trade, they feel like oh, hi, baby guy. They feel like, I don't know, I don't want to mess up my kid. I don't want to, make them have them miss something or things. But what all the studies show that, like, kids who are raised with families who are educated, like parents who are educated, they're going to be educated just by being around you. Like, they're going to be, they're going to know things and learn things. So it's, hi, you want to say hi to you?
Hi, baby Cole. And also, they're going to learn things that they need to know, right? Like, there's so many kids who come out not knowing basic geography, right? There's so many kids who come out and don't know how to go to the post office, like what to say, who to talk to.
Adults.
Yeah. Yeah, right? So it's like, it's one thing to do the books things and the worksheets and all that, but it's another thing to function in society. Like I said, like we go to the library, and once my kids got to a certain age, I stopped checking out books. You go to the librarian, you show them the card, and you have the conversation.
Oh
right?
yeah,
And
absolutely.
sometimes the library will try to come over to me and I'm like, no, 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 you go ahead. You
Oh
guys
yeah.
have the
And
conversation.
I'm like, oh, 1 second. They're gonna tell you or how,
Yeah,
absolutely. I tell my kids all the time, like, you have to be bold, you have to learn to speak for yourself,
absolutely.
and you need to ask, and yeah, for sure. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's a skill that I'm always honing in
These
on
are
them.
life skills that they're building.
Absolutely. And I think that's another thing I love about homeschooling too, is that you can actually use what you actually need in life and not what you
Mhm.
don't. Like little things. Like I remember it didn't occur to me until I think we had two kids at the time, maybe three. Anyway, the kids would like kind of line up to go to children's church. And I realized my kids, like at church, whatever. And I realized, my kids and a few other kids, like they didn't know how to get in a line. And I was like, how do they not? And I was like, oh, they don't line up.
They don't line up.
Like, oh no, have I, scarred, like not scarred, but have I, missed something that
Like
they'll
done a
need?
disservice or something.
And I was like, oh gosh, like they may need that in life. And I realized the only time you need to walk in a line is like prison. Other than that, I don't think that you walking in a straight line is actually a thing for life. Like, I was like, they'll be fine. They don't know how to walk in lines, and it's okay. I mean, of course, they learn how to do it eventually,
Right.
but like, this is how you line up. You line, I
Mhm.
remember we had whole lessons on lining up at school. I'm like, how much time was wasted?
Right.
We should be able to see the kid's head in the back of you. Look at your feet. Look at your arms. Like, it was like a whole thing. Anyway, I
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. Yeah, and those are
was
some of the
ready.
comments that you get, right? Like, well, your child's not going to know how to sit down. Yes, they will. They go to church and we have home training at home. So they will
Absolutely
learn how to
right.
sit down quietly.
And most of it, like adults don't know how to sit down. Like nobody wants to sit down for a 3 hour meeting. It's just like, then in school, why are we sitting down for 3 hours?
That's a good point.
And we're learning, and what we're seeing is the whole sedentary life of,
Yeah.
like, of these kids.
Sitting
Like
all day.
homeschooling kids are probably a little bit more active in
Yeah.
general, which is helpful, but not less self-controlled. I think this is the
Mhm.
main thing. But they practice self-control as well. I used to do that with my kids when they were small. I put them on a
Mhm.
rug. So we're going to practice self-control for 30 seconds when they were small.
I
They
do
were
that too.
over time. Okay, now we're going to practice it for 60 seconds. Now we're going to do it for 2 minutes, just build up over time. So then we need to have it if we're at a doctor's office or something, or some kind
Yeah.
of, hey guys, it's time to practice self-control.
Yeah. I didn't do the build up, but I sure do those lessons. So I have another question for you, and I want you to share some resources with us. But really quickly, I just wanted to say that I love that you honed in on writing because in the AI world, in the world of internet and technology, people could be like, "Oh, you don't need that. You can go to ChatGPT and they'll produce something for you in 2 seconds." But the fact that you realized that it was a great skill and that you made sure that your children knew how to write well, I think that's so beautiful. And I also experienced that too, where like I'd say to my 9-year-old, tell me about such and such, and I'll get this elaborate, eloquent oral report. I'm like, yes, go write that. It was fun. It was big. Wait, what? But then I realized later that, those don't sync up. And there are even certain curriculum out there that will give you like a source text to teach you how to like do the keyword outlet and to build on things. So parents, if you're finding that your children are not having that connection or it's not syncing, just work with them, just keep putting the effort in and trust and have faith that they will do it eventually.
Oh
So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it is definitely a process. Like I thought
yes.
they did a little bit, like I was like, why is this so challenging? I ask one, just write what you would say. But one, it's writing is an endurance kind of thing. So
Hmm.
a lot of times I would say just like we're gonna write, and you have to have a time because otherwise they'll just, throw very like, okay, we have 20 minutes. I want you to just write for these 20 minutes, and practice different styles of writing. We did a lot of like expositional, like
Hmm.
like explaining and stuff. And then we did like informational things. But you can do just kind of telling a story, like
Yeah.
narratives or persuasive. They like that. They like that because you give should kids be able to drive a car? They're like, yes. Okay, you got to give me 3 reasons. Write your outline. And so that was the
Right.
thing. They had to all, write an outline first. That was just the first day. Just write an outline and put in what your main points would be, and then each of your main points needs to have, 3 details, depending on the age that they were, but
Of
two
course.
to two details, maybe 5 for the older ones. And then they'd have to write it. They write their essay and then rewrite it. I hated that. And then
The
more,
draft and the
you're
yep.
not done until you've done it 3 times. So first draft. Now we have your second draft, and then we have your final draft. Sometimes I have a third, then a final. But yeah, IEW. I heard that was a really good one.
I use it. That's the one I
Oh,
was
you
thinking
okay?
about.
See?
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good,
Yeah.
good.
Cole, you're
That's a.
being so patient with me. I'm gonna try to ask your mommy one or two more questions,
Oh
okay?
no, he's good. Yeah.
So one of the things you talked about was like how you see God in everything, right? Like God is the God of order and logic. And if you look at the trees or the geography, you see God in it, right? You see him in science, everything. How do you incorporate your faith in, and I'm not even going to call it homeschooling, it's home-centered education, right? Like how do you incorporate your faith in it?
Oh my gosh, everything, all of it. From literally just like their, just their own like devotions and things we'll just talk about like the things that they're whatever they're reading, just apply that to their life. I think that's an important thing is
Mhm.
whatever they're learning about the Lord, they need to see how it translates to their life in their season. Like a lot of times I don't know, like what is it? Is it Colossians 3:23? Like whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for man. A lot of times we would look at that as an adult and we're like, yeah, that's why you have to be excellent at your job and blah, blah, blah. We would tell them like, you have a job, you need to be excellent. They don't have a job. That's too far for them right now. It's like, what do you have to do today? Like, cleaning your bedroom floor. Like, don't put their clothes, your stuff under your under your bed, you know, um, don't just throw stuff on the floor. Like whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, because he's the one that sees this, and let's practice the integrity before him. So I think down to that for sure, for the person, the child of God that they are, but then also it's important to just like as they're learning all of their like lessons and things like usually we use a lot of curriculum that kind of doesn't shy away from the fact that God is who he is, that he is who he said he is, and he's the truth and the way and the life. And so it always weaves it in there as well. But because their work in this season is their schoolwork,
Yeah, that's
it's
your
so
obligation.
easy to like help them to see that connection between what they do and what God is calling them to do, things like that. So but yeah, we do that. We do a lot of just kind of like Bible study and Bible memorization and praying, especially when it's so good when they're having like hard moments or just frustrated or whatever, just to remind them that God is here right now too. And he wants to help you right now. And he's not far off. He's Emmanuel. He's God with you.
Yeah.
And we can invite him in right now, like, because he wants you to be able to understand math, and he already understands it. He knows all the answers. So all we have to do is, just kind of lean into him and be still, know that he's God, things like that. And so just connecting their faith to the work that they presently are in. And then we read a lot of books that kind of like just incorporate the just kind of biblical principles. And so that's another way when we write our essays or things they can, write about things that they're learning about the Lord. And then we do, what else is it? The language arts curriculum that they use, it does a lot of, even just in little ways, like just kind of focusing on the Lord. But yeah, a lot of our curriculum is Christian based. So that a little bit, that kind of makes it easier. But absolutely, yeah. I think the biggest thing is just kind of leaving, like it's not like devotion time and then we go into work. It's like, no, the whole thing.
Yes.
And
God
even when
in the center.
they're on the board, yeah, I'm like, this is all the reasons why, like, we have lunch and that's God providing for us. And we're going to just thank God for the food that he gave us. And when we do art, we're going to, express what what he's put in us to do. Or if we are doing science, we're discovering how awesome God is. So everything we learned, we're going to learn about refraction and light, waves and stuff today. But that's just showing us how awesome God is. Isn't he amazing that he created, light to just travel at 186,000 miles per second, other things. And so just helping them to see just the connection there. But yeah.
That's so good because I love that you expanded it. It wasn't just here's how you include him or incorporate him in all the subjects, but it's just in life in general. From the moment you wake up to the moment that you go to bed, every single experience, it can be a practical application or a moment to minister to your kids or to show
Mm.
them God and everything. So I think that's beautiful.
I want to say one other thing is
Yeah,
that
please.
I think that that's the really strong benefits of homeschooling is that you are really honestly discipling your kids,
Hmm.
kids who are with you, and it is such an important, like just time for their life because they're being formed, and but I think one of the more important things is so for me as I'm going through the day with my kids and with the other kids, like I'm just like for me it's the ministry that I feel called to, and so I think the more important thing is that you as the parent and the educators to be just staying in communion with the Lord throughout the day, not just like
Mm,
devotion time in the morning and then okay, now we're gonna get into it. So no,
yeah.
no, no, keep that, because even in their day God is going to be speaking to you about what this one needs or what, oh, sorry, what this one needs, and how to say this and how to teach this. Because some things, there's plenty of things where I'm like, I have no idea how I'm going to respond to this or what they need,
Right.
or do this. But I'm in constant communication with the Lord. So I'm like, okay, Lord, I'm just praying in my spirit, like, okay, guys, show me how to say this, show me how to do this in a way that they'll understand this, or help me have patience with the fact that this kid is crying over a meltdown because all of a sudden they don't remember how to do 7 plus 1 more. You know how to do 7 plus 1 more. You know how to do multiply, but right now you can't remember 7 plus 1 more. It's like they're just exhausted and frustrated. And so it's like, help me, Lord, to know what to do, or help me to help my own heart of like maybe God is
Yeah.
saying, pray
This
for them.
journey's for
They
us
don't
too.
deserve it. It's like
This
okay,
journey is definitely
well,
for our development too. Oh my gosh.
yeah, oh
I thought it
gosh.
was about them, but it's not.
Right. And I always said, I remember when I first had kids, I was like, oh my gosh, like being a mom is so hard. And people are like, oh, it's such a blessing. I'm like, no, it's just hard. It's hard all the time. But then I realized God is like, it is a blessing because he's using this to form us into the women. And because that was always my prayer before I had kids, before I was even a wife. I'm like, help me to grow to be the woman of God you want me to be, Lord. It's like I am. Like, you want to be patient. I used to be so patient before I
Oh
had
my
kids. I was so
gosh.
kind. Just so like, and then I was like, what happened to me? It's like, no. It just meant that you weren't in the crucible of life yet. So
Yeah.
now I'm growing. I've had patience. Now I'm kind
Yep.
of,
I keep
and
telling people that I pray these prayers expecting God to just download it, like Holy
oh
Spirit
yeah,
activate. And he's like, no, I'm gonna give you a situation that's going to
this
develop
is
that
how
thing. I'm
it
like,
happened.
no, I don't want
Right.
it that way, God. Let's
Yeah.
not do that. All right. So I'm gonna ask you one. I don't want to say that because I don't want to lie. Let me ask you another question.
No, it's
Um,
I'm here for it all. This is fun.
so in one of the questions that I asked you, you answered, but the bigger answer was a mindset shift. It was stop trying to do all the things, especially all the things at the same time, right? So, in terms of resources or mindset shifts, like what strategies have you found particularly helpful? Um, in terms of a resource, I actually, like I told you, I met you through HSLDA, right? So that's like a great resource that if you're trying to do home-centered education, then you should know about them because they help with like legal defense and they're always giving out good information. But in terms of resources or other mindset shifts, are there any final thoughts you want to share or any strategies that you have found particularly helpful in your journey?
Um, I think I think it's always good to just kind of glean from people who are a little bit further down the road than you are.
Mhm.
Like we always we need that that one,
Community.
yeah, like a community and just someone who's literally like, oh yeah, my kid's already grown and I walked this road already,
Mhm.
um, like someone who's just farther down ahead of you. They just have some wisdom to be able to share with you. Um, and he's doing it here. Hey, baby Cole.
Yeah, I definitely agree with
Um,
like the trailblazers and the pioneers.
okay, so yeah, and just being able to just glean from them. Some other books I think have been helpful. Just even just growing in like um, just I want to say like biblical womanhood in general.
Mm.
That's been helpful just to embrace that. I also did, I don't know if anybody else has heard about MOPS, Mothers of Preschoolers. That was a huge resource for me. And now it's called the Mom Co. It's great.
Oh, they
But
changed their name?
yeah, they did. I
Oh,
know.
okay.
At the conference this year, they announced it. So this past year. But yeah, so that was super helpful for me because right, because everything is your perspective. You know, like if you see it
Mm.
as hard, it's gonna be hard. If you see it as unnecessary, it's gonna feel unnecessary. You know, if you see it as a blessing, it's gonna be a blessing, you know.
I love that.
And it just goes to show that like so many, I mean, just like you just really have to get your mind, you have to be transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Amen.
So you can see his good and pleasing and perfect will for you. Otherwise, you will not see it at all. This is funny story. The founders of our church, before my husband started pastoring it, call him Bishop. Bishop would tell these great stories. Anyway, he had this really great story about this guy who like went to he was moving from one town, he was relocating from one town to another, and he was like he's like, oh, and I guess he went to a filler station, like a gas station, to get some gas, and he asked the guy there, he's like, hey, you know, I'm new to this town, you know, what is this town like or whatever? And the guy at the gas station was like, well, what was your other town like? He was like, oh, it's horrible, it was terrible. It was, you know, people were mean, you know, the city, everybody was bad, the weather was horrible, it was a terrible place. And he's like, oh, yeah, you'll find that this town is actually pretty much like that. And then a little while later, some hours later, another guy came and he was relocating from another town. And he asked the guy, he's like, yeah, I'm new here. You know, what's this town like? He's like, well, what was your other town like? He's like, oh, it was beautiful. I just hate I had to leave. You know, there was the people were great. I love my job. I love my neighbors. It's just a beautiful town. You know, I just had to leave because of work. He's like, yeah, you'll find this town is pretty much like that too. And it
Mm.
just goes to show like your perspective.
Absolutely.
Do it. Like if you can see the blessing and the value and the benefit of, you know, being with your kids and homeschooling them in this and the whole season of it, you're gonna see that. Like
Yeah.
that'll be your experience. But if you feel like it's, you know, if your mind is like, oh, I'm sacrificing my whole life for this and nobody's gonna appreciate it and I'm gonna mess up my kids and all the fear
You
of
probably
the
will.
frustration of it, that's probably how you experience
Yeah, I'm definitely telling my kids. As soon as we get up, I'm gonna be like, let me tell you something. Listen to this story. Because you're right, like it's all about perspective, right? Like you have the people who I remember when I was working, people would say, oh, it's home day. Wednesday, I'm so excited, or it's CGF. And I'm like, I'm good Monday through Friday at work. Like it does not matter. I'm not having the Monday blues or the Sunday blues or whatever. Like
Oh,
you keep all that to yourself. Like don't bring that
yes.
up on me.
Like I love Monday. Monday is great. Friday
Right.
too. Wednesday is wonderful.
Right.
Every day is a
But it
blessing.
really is perspective. You're 100% right.
Mhm.
All right. What final thoughts? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so your babies are 12, 2 months, 2 years old. How old are the other three?
Oh, so the oldest is 12,
Yeah.
and then 10, 8, 6, and then the 2-year-old, and then a new guy, a 2 month
Okay.
old.
So you had a break and then you went back to your every two
We did.
years.
Like, we're so done. This is so cool. Let's, you know, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that throughout the, you know, the I don't know, all the toys, all the things we high chairs, we don't need that anymore. And I was like, oh wait.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
But
I
no.
told you, mine are 9, 7, and 10 months. So we
Right.
had a pretty significant break.
That's so cool. So I have a question for you.
Of course.
You say how did you get to be a part of ICHI with not ICHI, because here it's ICHI.
CHAP.
Here in Pennsylvania. Yeah. How did you start on this with
Same way that I met you. So the first thing is that I went to a convention. So CHAP, the Christian Homeschool Association in Pennsylvania, they have a
oh
convention. So last May I went to it, and then as a result of that, I got on their newsletter. So let me backtrack. HSLDA announced that CHAP was having a convention. So the
oh
closest thing to me in Jersey was the Pennsylvania. We didn't have anything like happening in Jersey. So I went, had an amazing experience, so many excellent speakers, so
yay.
many great people. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this. So I reached out and I said, how can I support? I think they had something in their newsletter. They were saying that they were looking for volunteers and all these different things. So just the way I met you, I'm like, I need to meet Aziza. I just emailed them and said, hey, I'd like to support. And I was like, I don't live in Pennsylvania. I live in Jersey, but can I be a part of this awesome work that you're doing? And that's how I met Ginger. She called me and her husband. All three of us just chatted. And they're like, so here are a couple things. And then Ginger, who is the current host of, she does the podcast and the YouTube show. She was like, how'd you feel about doing a talk show? And I'm like, oh my gosh. I just said a resounding yes to her. But what was happening in the background was weeks or probably a month before, God had said to me, start recording podcasts. And I'm like, on what? So he said on Homeschool. And I called the girlfriend. I'm like, let's do it. I don't know what it's going to be. We don't have to give it a name. Let's just record some stuff. And fast forward, I told her, I was like, Ginger, God had prepared before this. So when you said, how would you feel about it? It wasn't, let me go pray about it. I was like, oh God, that's what you're doing. So that's one of those God
Oh,
divine connection stories.
oh, wow, that's so cool. I love how you were like, let me just get started with what I can do, Okay, like let's just record. I feel like I gotta start a podcast, which I
Yeah.
think this is so like great and helpful. Because these are the kind of things that I looked for when I first started. I was just like, what is there? Who is there? Who can help or do, because I just feel so like a fish out of water, and I
Yeah.
was an educator. So sometimes I'm like, I can't imagine what,
Right. Someone who's never done it, right?
yeah. And I'm
In the
like, see,
official sense.
here. And I also want to say that I think that the deficiency that parents feel about teaching their own children, it doesn't just come from society. I think it even comes from the education system. Like we kind of say like, say it, but not say it of like, oh, let us like, you just feed them and clothe them. We'll take care of it.
Yeah.
Put them in school as much as possible, before school, after school, summer school.
Yeah.
We got, and so we kind of make parents feel like, that they are, deficient in some way. So,
Yes.
so yeah, I love that we're kind of counteracting that
Hmm.
pressure.
Yeah.
Um, and just even having this as a resource is huge. So thank you for your obedience,
Oh
your
my
answer
gosh.
to so many people.
Oh, praise God.
Glad to be able to be on here with you. It's a pleasure and an honor too. Thanks for.
Thank you. I want to say something really quickly to what you just said, because in addition to like our own mindset and like whatever insecurity or whoever's telling us that we're not enough, sometimes it's well-meaning individuals. Like you'll have someone who's close to you who will
That's true.
say, well, what about socialization? What about this? And they say
Absolutely.
all these myths that they never really thought about, right? Because if you go to school, your teacher tells you, you're not here to socialize, stop playing, right? But then fast forward, you're like, well, what
Or
about
every
socialization?
socialization isn't healthy socialization.
That part.
I was socialized at a public school. Help, Lord. I'm
There you
like,
go, right?
God had to totally cleanse me of the socialization.
Yeah. Someone actually
So
said that to me. They're like, aren't you concerned about socialization? I'm like, yes, that's why I'm doing it.
that's why we're homeschooling, right?
That's
Then
why
I
I'm
can
doing
start.
it. Right. But I
Then
really
I
feel like
can.
sometimes, huh?
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I really feel like sometimes well-meaning individuals plant a seed
Mhm.
in your head. And then as a result of
The
that,
doubt
you're
is
trying
seen.
to, that doubt comes, and then all the things that you're trying to do in one day is to prove someone wrong or to prove that you can do
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
And you may not do that consciously. It may be the subconscious or unconscious thing of you trying to make sure that that person is not right, that you're going to mess your child up and all those things that people tell you.
right,
So,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, so I totally agree. And that's like the farthest from the truth. But it can even be your own family or your own friends, that they're just, and sometimes they're just asking questions. Like they're like, hey, what
Yes.
is seriously? And they need you to teach them. Just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like anytime something, something new comes up, because it kind of just threatens their kind of security of everything they thought, like, wait
Right.
a minute. But
Hmm.
if the public school was good enough for me, what is it? Why isn't it good enough for you? It's like, well,
Right.
I'm
And not realizing it's not a judgment call because I
it,
made this
yeah,
decision does not mean that I'm looking at you like, why haven't you done it? Right.
right, exactly. It's like, that maybe that's just like it, we all have different paths and calling. But as
Yeah.
for me in my house, also I just want to say that I think that I was gonna say, oh, when it comes to like the way they do even the socialization of public schools, like it's so interesting. Like I'm talking about another like skill for life. Like, when was the last time as an adult that you were in the room with 20 other people and they were all your exact same age, born, and like you're born the same year that you were born in. It's like that just never happens once you leave school. Like you have to be able to, get along with and work with people who are older than you, younger than you, same language or not, like, and that's socialization. Like actually it's like socially awkward, or not, what's the word, like social, I guess awkward, or whatever the word is, just like just not strongly developed socially if you only can relate to other year-olds. Like nobody else is 8, so I can't talk to them. It's like no. You need to be able to hang out with a 2-year-old or or 11-year-old, if or somebody who's not hang out, but but just be be able to
interact.
Somebody who is, like you said, when your kids go to the library, like, yes, they're an adult, and you need to be able to say what you need with your face sticking out of your neck. like I need a blah 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 blah, and I'm not gonna be intimidated just because you're 38. I'm 8, and I need you to check out my book for me. So I think that those are some of the skills that you easily get in homeschooling, because rarely is it like, oh look, all 20 of us are the exact same age.
Right. Thank you for dispelling that myth. That's so true. Yeah, right, Cole? Aziza, thank you so much for your time. It was such a pleasure just watching you operate in grace and poise, with baby Cole, and just navigating all the things and modeling that with God, all things are possible. 6 kids and you're doing it.
Yes. Even though I look at most things, I'm like, how do we have 6 kids and how are we doing this? And it's like, man, I feel like it should be harder. People are like, wait.
Wow. That's grace.
The grace of God.
That's grace.
Yeah, God's grace is so sufficient. So be encouraged, y'all. Whoever else is out there watching this, this isn't something that God is only doing for you and I. This is the thing that like He is like empowering His people day by day, and He cares about His children. That's my firm belief. I'm like, God loves His kids, us and the little ones. So He's like, He gives what is needed to take care of them, being a good father.
Thank you so much for your tips, your introspection, and your perspective.
Thank you. And for you too. I appreciate you. You've been so insightful. And it's always good to be able to talk to, even across the country.
I know.
Still moving in you all's world. I love it. This is
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's a pleasure.